Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Jon Dario. Hi, Jon.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm excited about our conversation because our conversation is going to be all about results. And as you know, Jon, we are all about process documentation, and it all has to do with results. We need to get results when we're documenting our processes. We need to implement it. We need to make sure that people are following it. So talking about results is a favorite subject, because I always talk about implementation and results, and I'm excited to talk about that and about your new book, and give our listeners some valuable information on how they can utilize their team to get results.
Very much. I look forward to a great conversation. I couldn't agree more that we're all in the business of delivering results, and sometimes that can be more challenging than it seems. But with some systems and structure, we can make it a lot easier.
Absolutely. All right. So let me read your bio first. So you are a leadership expert with over 30 years of experience with some of the top names in the retail and financial services industries. And you are the creator of AIM, A-I-M, right. A system that helps managers achieve radically reliable results.
Right.
So that radically reliable results is also the name. It's AIM, how to achieve radically reliable results. I realize it's a tongue twister. You can say it many times.
It's purposely tricky, yes.
Yes, it's great. And you are currently a CEO and an adjunct professor at Seton Hall University.
Correct.
You do speaking engagement workshop. You're an author. So fantastic. So that's your background.
Yes.
And so let's talk about AIM. What does AIM stand for?
Sure. AIM simply stands for Action Item Management, and it's a system that has a number of components, but it is all about helping managers and organizations focus on the things that they can control, which is their action items, but within the context of understanding what results they're trying to achieve, and within the context of understanding the external influences that might get in the way of achieving those results. So my AIM system, is a framework that puts all the pieces together and provides the structure for managers to kind of chart that path towards consistent and sustainable execution.
Nice. Okay. So what are some of the principles of the AIM system?
Sure. First of all, I kind of already explained one of the most foundational principles, and that is an equation. The equation is action items plus external influences equals results. And the more that leaders can really identify with that equation, it puts them into the mindset of first wanting to understand exactly what result they're trying to achieve is, or what multiple results they're trying to achieve are, and anticipating the external influences and their potential impact. And then when you view it in the form of an equation, your mind immediately jumps to, okay, I have to then deliver the action items through my team that are going to get me to the results. So that equation is one component. Another key component is a performance management regimen that includes a good definition of the standards that the organization has to meet, and routines that go along with those standards. So a definition of the team's routines that they'll do on a repeatable basis to kind of achieve the standards that are obviously tied to the desired results. And then there's I spent a lot of time in my book talking about how to create the right environment for all of that to happen. So there's a number of components to that environment, which I'm sure we'll get to as we talk through this. And finally, the management behaviors that I think are most critical to delivering on daily execution, I call them the 3 Fs. The 3 Fs are focus, follow-up, and feedback. And to the degree that managers can spend their time doing those 3 things with their team, that's the degree to which they'll do a great job of reinforcing all the team behaviors that flow from the other components that I talked about.
Nice. So let's talk about the focus, the follow-up, and the feedback.
Sure.
So focusing. So I would assume that this is not the shiny object syndrome. So if you are giving an order, you should make sure that this actually gets executed and not the next day something else happens.
Yeah, you said that really well. My view on focus involves a couple of different angles. First of all, it is about focusing on not the shiny objects, as you rightly say, but focusing on the behaviors and the actions that the team has identified that will drive to the results. It's easy to get distracted by the flavor of the day or the fun tasks or the easy tasks, and a little bit harder to keep everybody kind of committed to the things that are most tied to the results and most tied to the most impactful results. So that focus is critical. I also think that leaders have a responsibility to keep the team from drifting onto what I call side ventures. Side ventures is, I picked this up from my kids in their video games. The big campaign video games have these other side ventures that you can chase, and they're fun, but they don't get you to the end result of the actual video game. So in business or in organizational work, I like to think of those side ventures as things that people chase that aren't really taking them to the end goal.
That's right. That's exactly right. And then we have the follow-up.
Yeah. So follow-up, if you don't mind, I'd like to tell a little story about follow-up.
Of course. I would love to hear that story.
Early in my management career, I was managing a small regional sporting goods store, and I was having trouble. I had 6 department supervisors that worked for me, and I was having trouble getting them to deliver consistent execution on their weekly routine of having to set their departments up from a merchandising perspective for the weekend sales. I would walk with them every Monday morning, and they had until Friday afternoon to complete it. And inevitably, every week, none of the 6 were getting their list done. So I, being a young manager, was losing patience and wasn't maintaining my composure very well. And they weren't happy with me, and I wasn't happy with them. And I decided I walked their departments one Monday morning, and Monday afternoon, I was so angry that after the customer lunch rush at 2:00 in the afternoon, I walked around to follow up and see what they had done. And of course, they all looked at me like I was crazy, and they said, "Wait, we have until Friday. Why are you checking on me today?" And nobody had anything done, and I went home very angry that night. Tuesday, I determined that I was going to do exactly the same thing at 2:00 on Tuesday. I walked their departments, and nobody had anything done, and I was even more angry, and they were angry at me. Wednesday, I walked the first couple of departments at 2:00. Nobody has anything done. But then I see Regina. Regina was my department supervisor for the fashion department. And she comes walking towards me with a big smile on her face. And guess what? She had every single thing done. And I have tears in my eyes. I'm so happy. And I asked her how she got it done. And she said, "Look, you walked at 2:00 on Monday. I didn't have anything done. You walked Tuesday at 2:00. I didn't have anything done. I figured you're probably going to walk Wednesday at 2:00, and I didn't want to disappoint you." And that lesson was probably the best lesson I ever had about management. And it just reinforced the point that people want to be successful. People don't wake up in the morning with an intention of sabotaging the company that they work for. And follow-up is a way to set the tone and set the expectation for the team as to what you really find important. And when it became clear to Regina that was what was going to be important, she wanted to be successful, and she delivered. And she was just the first. The others all caught on quickly after, and my life got so much easier as a manager. And that was That's what is behind follow-up. It's about being there, being present, letting people know what's important through the actions that you take as a manager, and making it so dependable that people are not confused about what you're going to do as a leader.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Great story. All
Thank
right.
you.
So now feedback. So obviously
Yeah.
you have the follow-up, you're focused on what you're going to do. You say what you want to be done. It's very clear. You follow up, you're present. People know you're present. What about feedback?
Yeah, so feedback is the whole point of it. Like, there's no point in following up if you don't provide feedback. I think, on the chance that people are successful, of course you want to reinforce the success, not only to make them feel good, but because it's good management. Because as you reinforce the positive successes, it breeds more positive success in the future. So it's an opportunity to reinforce the good stuff. If you're following up on a timely basis, it gives you a chance to redirect people if they're not executing in the way that you expected them to execute. Such misses are generally not because people don't want to be successful. As I said before, it's because there was some misunderstanding. And if you approach it from the standpoint of there being a possibility for misunderstanding, that frequent follow-up is going to give you the chance to correct the misunderstandings and provide redirection. And then finally, the third real big value of feedback is that you can build people's skills. I mean, as leaders, we want people to continue to grow and get better at what they do. And sometimes it's not about just correcting an immediate issue with the task at hand, but it's about helping people learn and develop how to be better overall and how to grow in their jobs. And that type of feedback is critical. And that can come whether somebody's successful or unsuccessful. You can help them with some feedback that might improve their ability to operate at a higher level in the future.
Agreed, because being quiet and not hearing anything, then it gets you to wonder, where did I do well, or I didn't do well? Or if somebody asks you to do something and you do it well, it's very important to acknowledge what they've done. So then they want to do more of that. So I agree with that. Yes.
So true. There's micromanagement is kind of a bad phrase in the leadership world these days. And I tend to think that people sometimes misinterpret the idea of micromanagement. Micromanagement doesn't mean you ignore people. To your point, I think you said that really well. It doesn't mean you stop communicating with people and leave them on their own. It means it's maybe about the way you manage, but certainly people don't want to do their jobs and receive no input from their supervisor.
That's right. That's right. So now you mentioned the environment. So tell me more about the environment.
Sure. In my book, I do talk about a number of very specific things regarding the environment. I'll hit on a couple of them here. I already talked about one, and that is a starting mindset that people want to be successful. As a manager and a leader, if you believe that people don't, if you have the belief that people want to be successful, you're half the battle's won, because you see your job as helping them be successful. If you think that people don't want to be successful and are trying to shirk their responsibilities, then you're going to end up in a punishment mode, and that's not really a good place to start. So that mindset is kind of step one of the environment.
So I think it's also, John, in this case, like, the mindset also has to be one's own, right? Because if you have the mindset that you want to succeed, you can then reflect it on others. If you're in a mindset that nothing can be successful, or it's not worth the try, or I had too many losses and then I'm not going to try anymore, it can become a problem, because then you also see others with the same lens that you see yourself.
So true. People look to the manager or the leader for guidance on how they should be feeling about tasks and the environment in general. And if you exude that negativity, absolutely it gets picked up on. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Okay, good. So continue with the environment.
Yeah. Sure. So a second component is just about being a respectable person. I think management is certainly a delegated authority in most organizations, but that doesn't mean that people will see you as a leader just because you've got the title of manager. And so, lots of research has been done on what makes people willing to follow others. And a lot of times it's not about any hugely complicated leadership skills. It's just about being a good person, just being a respectable person. And some of that has to do with saying please and thank you. Some of it has to do with being a great listener. And some of it has to do with just being willing to learn yourself and understand that you don't have all the answers. And so that idea of being a respectable person is a second key element. I also talk about the idea that the team itself, having the right people on the team, is part of the environment. As much as I believe that most people want to be successful, sometimes there can be bad apples on a team, and it is the manager's responsibility to deal with that. You can't expect the good team members to consistently throw themselves into the team's goals if there are some bad apples that are kind of dragging the environment down. And then finally, on kind of a similar subject, I talk about attitude. Carl Jung, the psychologist, has a definition of attitude, and it's about the mind being preconceived to a particular bent on things. And I think in the world of management, the people's attitudes can change depending on a lot of things. Attitudes can change depending on the circumstances in front of them, the way the manager treats them, personal things that are going on in their lives, and so it's understandable that people's attitudes will be variable through the day, through the week, through the month, and we as managers shouldn't punish people for their attitudes, but we do need to be aware of them. And I think sometimes attitude can be a very hard thing for managers to address because it's very personal. And in my book, I share a tool that I call the tudometer. It's a silly little kitschy thing that allows the conversation about attitude to become more of an objective conversation, not a personal thing. And it's the tudometer is literally a diagram that goes from 0 to 10. It looks like a speedometer on a vehicle, and there's a label next to each one of the numbers. And like a zero on the tudometer is I hate my job and I'm going to sabotage the company. And a 10 on the tudometer is I love my job and nothing's going to get in my way of achieving the company's goals. And the numbers in between are statements that obviously fit in between. And the way managers use it is they can talk to employees about where they are on the tudometer. Hey, it seems like you might be a little low on little lower than usual on the tudometer today. Did something happen that caused you to slip? And the magic of it is that it turns attitude into a little bit more of an objective and maybe even a comical conversation, but it opens the door to actually addressing attitude in a way that helps employees not be defensive about it, and you can get to real solutions rather than getting into arguments about whether there's a bad attitude or a good attitude.
That's great. And attitude is very important to address, absolutely. We're all about processes and procedures.
Yep.
What is the importance of having good processes and procedures in place in order to actually be able to execute?
Right. So I couldn't agree more with that philosophy. And I think that the easier you make it for people to understand what the expectations are and how to do their job and how to be successful, the better the entire team works together, and the better each individual can be at performing their jobs. So I think there's a book called The Checklist Manifesto that is describes how checklists can create some of that structure that helps people understand exactly how they go about performing the functions that are important. I think that sometimes checklists can become a little bureaucratic, but the concept of checklists and the concept of having a standard language and a standard procedure that everybody on the team follows is it just makes it easy for people to perform their jobs. I mean, the reality, if I go back to my equation, there's always going to be external influences that enter into a person's daily work. And if everything becomes about if the external influences end up in a kind of creating another dynamic that adds to people's confusion about the stuff that they just have to do, then it becomes a really chaotic environment for people. So that the structure, I think, is the backbone for people to kind of get into rhythms and get into habits, and habits create sustainable execution.
I agree. That's the stability. Like, no matter what happens out there, when you have your own processes and procedures, that creates stability inside your company, and then you can execute.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Jon, so if our listeners would like to hear more about you, where should they go?
It's easy to find me. I'm at jondario.com, jon.dario.com. There's plenty of information about me and what I do and some of my philosophies and everything else. And there's links to a number of tools that come from my books and everything else. So it's kind of all there, and they've got a link. If they want to reach out and talk more, they can click the link, and I'm happy to engage.
Fantastic. So we're going to include that in the show notes as well. And thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. A lot of data that I'm sure our listeners can learn from, and they will reach out to you. So thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
No, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.